up, guys? Welcome back to the Modern Knights podcast. This is episode 5.5 because this is a really short episode, so we'll get to episode 6 next week. I'm your host, Luke Jones, and with me is my co-host,
Nico Calderella.
Episode 5.5 is a big one. As those of you watching on YouTube and Rumble can tell, you can see our lovely faces, assuming your definition of lovely fits our faces in it. Which, if it doesn't, that's okay. We still love you because Jesus does too. Anyways, we're going to talk today about suffering. A lot of people ask this question, why is there suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? And my answer to that, the short and sweet, uncomplicated, unabridged answer is we brought suffering upon ourselves. For those of you who may or may not have read Genesis chapter 3, there's this guy named Adam who had his wife named Eve, and they disobeyed God. And because of that, us all being descended from Adam, inherited our first parents' sinful nature that they created, which then brings about this new aspect of life on a need for suffering, because suffering does us a lot of good in our fallen state, contrary to popular opinion. It betters us in many ways. I like to think, I don't recall who it is who said it, but a silversmith purifies silver by putting it through the fire over and over and over again until the silversmith can see his reflection purely through the silver. And until he can do that, he puts it through the fire, cools it, puts it in the fire again, cools it, and he does so until he can see his reflection. And I think that's a lot very similar to what God does with us, in the sense of Jesus promised that we will have many troubles in this world. And I think that those are all good, because suffering does many things for us. For one thing, suffering reveals our own inadequacies. Suffering keeps us humble. And I know as guys, we like to think, we're the best, we're the greatest, we're the strongest, right? We turn anything into a competition. It's not that hard. We'll take cooking and we'll turn it into a competition.
Yeah, that's the part about being masculine. You're competitive.
It's a natural part, yeah. But sometimes things like not getting that promotion at work or not making the captain of the team keeps us humble and reminds us that we are weak in and of ourselves. And I think that's even though it's suffering, it's hard, it sucks, but I think what that does is that causes us to look to God for our strength. And King David's a great example of this. There's a verse in one of the Psalms. It's at the end of it. I don't recall the exact reference, but he says, "Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers to fight." And I love that verse for several reasons. One, it goes to show that it is biblical for us to fight and protect. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is David is blatantly admitting that he's not strong by his own work. He's strong through what God has done in him, how God has created him. And he learned that through the many trials and all the suffering that he went through in his life.
Yes, and you can also relate that to many of the people of this world. Like, sometimes if they get an award, they'll be like, "I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." That's because you can't really go anywhere without your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Yep. Another thing that suffering does is suffering teaches us diligence and discipline. Yes. And I think a good little example of that would be if you don't do your chores like your parents told you to do, and you don't do your homework, and instead of doing what you should have been doing, being diligent in the work that you had to do and being disciplined enough to do it, instead you go and play video games or watch a movie. And you end up suffering through the consequences of your parents, whether it's getting grounded from, your car, whether it's getting grounded from going to see your friends, or whatever the punishment may be. There's a degree of suffering that happens there. And it's through that suffering that you learn, oh, I better do my chores when mom and dad tell me to. I better do my homework, and another thing that suffering does is suffering creates bonds of brotherhood. And I think one of the greatest examples of that is groups of soldiers who serve together, whether it's in the same platoon or even if they didn't serve within the same platoon, soldiers who just forge that bond of brotherhood through war. I don't think there's very many bonds stronger than the bond of brotherhood that is forged in suffering.
Yes, and I mean, off that brotherhood topic, I mean, that's probably the most, you could say, important thing to a group of people is to have that bond and that like brotherhood type connection with each other, because you'll always know each other.
Yep.
You'll know your friend's next move, pretty much.
Yep. And that's the things that people immediately go to in like a betrayal, for instance, is if a friend betrays you, you look at them and you go, but why? We went through X, Y, and Z together. We did A, B, and C. We went through, and you have all these examples, and maybe not all of them are examples where there's suffering involved.
Yeah.
But you'll find that the places where your friendship grew the most, where you grew that bond of brotherhood, and your trust in that person was strengthened, was through times of suffering, most notably. Mm-hmm. Another thing that suffering does for us is it produces patience. Yep. Patience is something that I think we're all sorely lacking in, and it is through suffering that we learn perseverance, and then through perseverance we learn character. That's in, I believe, Galatians 5.
Yes,
I think.
And trust us, we're speaking from experience because we needed a lot of patience to make this podcast happen.
There was a very, very, very mild degree of suffering that went into setting all of this up.
Yes.
And then the other thing that comes from character is that from character you then have hope. And I know I said this in a previous episode, but there was a video I saw of this young woman asking a street preacher, saying that, if I believe in Jesus, will I still suffer? And he said yes. And so then she asked the question, well, if I'm still going to suffer, even if I believe in Jesus, then what's the point of believing in Jesus if I'm still going to suffer? And so he says, well, because you're going to suffer either way. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, you're still going to, it's still going to take work for you to get in shape, right? Mm-hmm. It's still going to take work for you to get an A in school. It's going to take work for you to get anywhere in life, whether you're a Christian or not. And on top of that, we just have the daily sufferings of things, like deaths in the family or lost relationships, whether it's a breakup or a friend moves away or anything else along those lines. But in particularly in the area of losing a loved one who passes away, is you can suffer through that grief and that loss with this hope that on the other side that you're going to see them again, and you get hope through Christ in every area of suffering. And I think people miss that. A lot of people think that, oh, I accepted Jesus, so now life is going to be all rainbow and butterflies. And that's just not the case. Mm-hmm. It's just not the case.
Yes, and that's the same argument as why do bad things happen to good people. And, I mean, the answer to that is the devil tries to attack you in any way he can. And I know I mentioned this, multiple times on our podcast, but this is, really important because everyone has this question. And the devil just tries to pick you apart at any time, but you have to be like Job. You have to stand up and keep your faith in God, because God is the only one that can get you through it.
Yep. The Bible describes the devil as a roaring lion who's always prowling around looking for someone to devour. So he's always looking to bring temptation, suffering, pain. You name it. If it's bad, he's probably trying to bring it on you.
Yep.
But when God brings suffering on us, he does it out of a place of love that we tend to not get in the moment. But I've had times of suffering in my life, which I haven't even gone through great suffering, living in America. Mm-hmm. But I've had times of at least mild suffering, where in the time I didn't understand it. And I was just asking, why, God? Like, why is this happening? What did I do? What's the deal? And I can look back now and say, I understand. I see it. And I'm better now because of it. Did it hurt? Yes. But going back to the silversmith analogy, God refines us in the fire over and over again until he sees his son in us. Another great example is the potter and the clay. He's a potter fashioning his image out of clay in us, and he's going to keep on working on and in us until he sees his son. And then the last point I want to make is that suffering makes us strong. It is through suffering that we gain perseverance, and it is through being able to persevere that we are able to become strong. Most notably, I can think of working out, right? Mm-hmm. The longer you suffer the lifting weights or running, the more you're able to persevere, and the more reps you're able to do, and the more reps you're able to do or laps you're able to run, the stronger that you become.
Yep. It's kind of like that aspect of you have to endure the physical pain and the emotional pain.
Yeah.
Because that's what truly makes you a strong human being, is if you can do both, endure physical and mental pain.
Yeah. And then mentally speaking, how do I want to put this? There's a certain degree to which a man should be a rock for those around him. Mm-hmm. And I say to a certain degree because depending on the situation, depends on how much of a rock you should be to people. If you have someone who's just, like a crybaby, no. You need to know where that line is. But the most notable thing that I can think of is for myself at my dad's funeral when he passes away, which I hate to think about. That's tragic, and I don't want that to happen anytime soon. Now that that's aside, I want to be the one that everyone is able to go and lean on. I want to be the rock of the family that doesn't allow that loss to break my family apart, but to rather grab onto everyone and hold them together and be and to fill that space that my dad currently fills as the rock of our family. And that does not mean that I wouldn't cry, I wouldn't be emotional about it. Not all what I'm saying. But there is that degree of suffering so that I will be able to do that one day by having built up that emotional endurance and strength in order to be that rock.
Yep.
So, all right. So with that, what's the conclusion of this? Simply put, suffering is our friend. So go out there, suffer up a storm.
Yep.
Just
if anyone tells you suffering's bad, it's not. It's not bad.
Ask them to name one person who suffered who wasn't better for it in the end. They will not be able to give you a single person who suffered and persevered through it and was not better at the end. So, all right, with that, I'm Luke Jones.
I'm Nico Calderola.
We're signing off. Thank you for watching episode 5.5. Hit that like button and subscribe. Comment down below. All that fun stuff. Follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook.
We beg of you.
Spotify. I think that's it. Am I missing any?
Nope, I think that's it.
All
Rumble.
right. Rumble, yes, Rumble. Check us out there, too. See y'all next week.
See ya.
That was easy.